This is an incredibly exciting day for MIT and for the world as we celebrate the launch of the Stephen A. Schwarzman College of Computing. Our world is full of complex and challenging problems, and the widespread adoption of computing technologies has transformed virtually every industry. I believe that with dedication and the right resources, there is no problem that's too hard to solve. And we are only just beginning to scratch the surface of what high-performance computing can really do. From healthcare to engineering to the bleeding edge of scientific research, the best and brightest minds across nearly every field will rely on high-performance computing and artificial intelligence to help make the impossible possible. This college places MIT at the forefront of AI and high-performance computing research and will develop the next generation of great leaders whose ideas will change the world. Congratulations, and I look forward to seeing graduates from the MIT Schwarzman College of Computing do incredible things.
At MIT, we're dedicated to bringing knowledge to bear on some of the world's greatest challenges. But in order to scale our impact, we must accelerate the time from discovery to market. Building on a myriad of efforts at MIT to spur innovation and entrepreneurship, in October of 2016, we launched the engine to help founders from MIT and across the region create the next generation of world-changing companies. Or as Katie Reyes says, to bring disruptive technologies from the lab and into the light. Since Katie joined the engine as CEO and managing partner just 2 years ago, the engine has already invested in 16 companies working with some of the toughest technologies, including deep software and AI, robotics, and quantum computing. And now, with the launch of the MIT Stephen A. Schwarzman College of Computing, we have another opportunity to revolutionize the scale of impact enabled by computation and AI across disciplines, across technologies, across society, across the nation, and across the world. Shortly, Kate is going to lead a discussion with our esteemed panelists. But first, I have the privilege of introducing a person that needs no introduction. Eric Schmidt has had a distinguished career at Google and its parent company, Alphabet, growing Google from a startup to a global leader in technology. Now, a technical advisor to Alphabet, Eric advises its leaders on technology, businesses, and policy. And he was recently tapped to lead the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence to advise the US government on the national security implications of AI and how to maintain US competitiveness in the field. Over the past year, we have had the great fortune of having Eric here at MIT as a visiting innovation fellow. He has inspired MIT scholars to take innovation beyond invention, to address global problems, played a leadership role in advancing conversations around human and machine intelligence, and the tremendous support that he has given to launching this college. Eric?
I'd like to acknowledge three sets of people, Steve and Christine Schwarzman. Your generosity is far greater than this audience understands. The gift that you have given to create this college has now ignited an explosion of planning and philanthropy that will be billions of dollars from other donors and other universities to help establish the age of intelligence. It's an extraordinary achievement. And I mean it. It's very, very rare that you get a founder who has that kind of leverage, and we have them in our audience right now. Second person I'd like to acknowledge is President Rafael Reif, a good personal friend of all of us. The president, years ago, sat down with me and started talking about the problem that he saw of how the university was structured and how this new technology, which he understood would be transformative in the many other parts of the university that he cared about, he couldn't figure out a way to get there. So he and Provost Marty Schmidt figured out a way to create a college, which you're hearing about all day today, which works within the culture and norms of the university to actually achieve something which no one has yet been able to do. and that is to aggressively diffuse this new technology, which I'll mention in a minute, into fields which need it but can't get it on their own. And the final person I'd like to acknowledge is my very close friend, Dan Huttenlocher, one of the best hiring decisions made by MIT in a very, very long time. As the new dean, Dan will bring a level of professionalism and sophistication, and he knows how to build organizations. So you have everything you need right now, right? You have a strategy, you have the funding, you have the vision, and you have a leader to pull this off. That's why this is such an extraordinary moment. The reason that we're fundamentally here is to talk that this new age is far broader than people appreciate, and that the technologies that we're talking about here, which started out of computer vision, right? Computer vision is now better than human vision, appear to be able to solve some very, very long-standing problems that have existed in society. And what I want you to do is I want you to imagine a world where each and every one of us has an assistant. As a child, you have an assistant, which is your teddy bear, which helps you learn language. As an adult, you have an assistant that allows you to figure out what to do during the day and figure out what your choices are and help educate you and make sure that you're telling the truth and all the other things that humans run into in a daily life. And as an elderly person, you'll have an assistant who will help you with your medical needs and keep you deal with loneliness and keep you connected to your friends and achieve the things that you care about. This model of an assistant, which is both a virtual assistant as well as a robotic assistant in different forms, is at the basis of the vision of how people, all of us, will see a difference in our lives every day. And the story is profound. So in medicine, it's now clear, for example, in medicine, that we can begin to forecast events based on your healthcare data. And many, many companies, including mine, are working very hard to take the data that exists and put it all in a format where machine learning can go and take that data and help solve horrific diseases and terrible problems people find themselves in, but more importantly, help predict outcomes. Help you know that you need to get yourself to the hospital pretty quick, right? That kind of a thing. In the same way, we're also seeing results in distribution networks. I'll give you an example. Our company recently showed that we can predict the wind turbine electricity use in a clever way using reinforcement learning. And we're able to essentially anticipate the combination of where the wind is and where the demand is. Now you say, oh, okay, that's okay. There's lots of wind, there's lots of demand. It's a huge number because these distribution markets don't make a lot of money. So all of a sudden, this technology is the difference between not being able to fund these projects with capital and debt versus the ability to fund them and grow them and build real businesses from them. So on the margin, even traditional businesses benefit from the kind of scalable analytics that this technology provides. So this brings us to the panel right now. And what we want to talk about in this panel is entrepreneurship. Now, economists will explain in great detail that job growth and economic growth is not coming from really big companies and not coming from really small companies. It's coming from a relatively young and fast-growing companies of all kinds, not just tech companies, but others as well. We know that entrepreneurs drive the economy, whether we like it or not, of at least the Western nations. We know this to be true. And what do you need to have these companies? You need entrepreneurs. And it turns out you need some other things, which I'll talk about. Now, entrepreneurs come in many, many different kinds and phases. You have the sort of scientific founder, the stereotype in my world, but there are many, many other people who are sort of fulfilled with a vision. They have an idea, they care about something, and they personalize it. They believe in it, and they convince others to follow them. It's one of the most fundamental human skills, right? And that entrepreneurial spirit, which is at the basis of our success as a country, right, needs more juice. One of the things that's interesting is that while in the world I live in, it's incredibly entrepreneurial, there's all this funding and so forth, the total number of firms that are entrepreneurial is declining in America. It's also declining elsewhere, right? There's something about the system that makes it harder and harder and so forth for people to want to do this. So it seems to me that a job of the university is to help create entrepreneurs. Now they're born, right? They have this special skill. They have this skill that I, for example, don't have, where they can see it and they know it and they want to make it happen. But the university can help support them, educate them, get them connected. Get them connected to their friends as a set found the company and so forth. And MIT has been at the center of this for a long time. One of the things that's interesting about this new world is that as we enter the entrepreneurial age, it's going to be important to remember that if you have multiple entrepreneurs and multiple sets of data and multiple platforms, they all benefit by sharing data. Now, you sit there and anybody who's been through a legal review says, well, we have to own this, we have to own this, we can't release it, and so forth. But in fact, this data gets better with sharing. And so the platforms that I and others have built over the entire aspect of my career will now be augmented by additional sources of data that can be used by entrepreneurs to solve really hard problems. So I mentioned all the language and learning things. Imagine if we can begin to build knowledge libraries of how people think, what they do, what choices they have. Imagine the contribution that that would have in this age of intelligence. There are so many other examples where you can apply AI to solve problems. There are people who are, for example, using artificial intelligence to solve problems that are computationally intractable by doing essentially AI estimates for the hard bits. And that techniques will lead to fundamental expansions in material science, which will again create companies, fundamental expansions of knowledge in climate change and climate science, and so forth and so on. MIT, for example, is a leader in organic chemistry. Organic chemistry can be understood as a relaxation problem of getting these compounds to merge together. Every one of those is another startup, another business, another problem solved. So we are at the beginning of an explosion of essentially innovation and discovery in each of the key fields that is needed to create these companies. Let me tell you that we need more entrepreneurs. MIT is at the forefront of creating them. There's a long history in Cambridge, you all know this, of doing this, and we need more and more and more. The shortage of talent is being addressed by the university here. The shortage of faculty is being addressed by the Schwarzman's gift and the creation of this college. So we are on plan. The problem is we're not doing it fast enough. So I want the vision where medical care is far more effective, far cheaper, and far better. I want the vision of material science and new businesses and services around that. I want the ones in biology that solve all sorts of diseases, but more importantly, are new compounds, new organic approaches to life. I want the sustainability that's implied by the climate change work. I want all of those businesses to happen. And what's beautiful about it is that MIT is at the forefront in every single example that I just gave you. Thank you very much. And obviously, you're going to introduce our panel.
I am. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. This is a panel on AI and the marketplace. So how does AI play with entrepreneurship? And we have the most incredible people here with us today. So I'm going to do a very brief introduction of each one and then jump right in to the discussion that we want to have. So next to me is Helen Greiner, and she is the co-founder of iRobot. She's a roboticist, incredible thinker about how robots will affect the future, and a multiple-time entrepreneur. Next to her is Jim Breyer. He is a renowned venture capitalist, and in Boston, we always lament that he was the one that backed Facebook. But has done an incredible amount of investing both in China and the US. So we'll have very interesting perspective. Next to him is Bob Langer, who's one of our gems here of entrepreneurship, has founded many, many companies and made a huge impact in different areas of healthcare. So thanks for being here. And then Jocelyn Goldfein, who is at Zetta Ventures and is a partner there and works with entrepreneurs in AI. And then certainly last but not least is Professor Tang, who is the co-founder of SenseTime, which I believe was Hong Kong's first unicorn and a true leader worldwide in AI. If you didn't see him for the Quest for Intelligence, he's also absolutely hilarious, so welcome.
But no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. So we're going to start off with US versus China, because how could we not? It seems like we're kind of in the middle of a space race right now with China. And I thought I'd start with Jim, who has invested on both sides of this ocean into AI. And my question to you is, how do we not make this something that destroys one another, but amplifies it? And kind of what do you see coming from both sides, the US and China? And how does this play out? What are you excited about? What are you scared of?
Well, first, it's just wonderful to be here at MIT, and Steve and Christine Schwarzman, what a gift to students, faculty for decades to come. And Raphael is just a great leader. So I want to start with that around MIT as a local Bostonian. China-US in 2 minutes. I just returned. Very proud to be a Series A investor in SenseTime. Very proud to have done so much around artificial intelligence in the last 2 years. If I had to categorize AI and the state of AI today, here's where I think the US is still unparalleled, as I speak from one of the great universities of the world. Our top universities are turning out the very best, brightest, most creative, technical and philosophical leaders, and many of the best AI companies, particularly in healthcare, that Breyer Capital is backing, is an interdisciplinary group of people, whether it's biology, physics, electrical engineering, computing, ethics. They're all coming together in these very interesting startups that are working with hospitals, academic centers in very interdisciplinary ways. That is happening in the US in profound areas of healthcare, in particular, cancer, AI, cardiology, that is not occurring at that level at Tsinghua or the very best Chinese universities. So in a nutshell, my view is for deep domain-specific AI, particularly in medical and healthcare, the diversity, female leaders, scientists, biologists, machine learning come together in the US in more profound ways than anywhere else in the world, and I don't expect that to discontinue. Xie.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to move to Bob Langer next, because this is, he is steeped in how technology impacts many areas of healthcare. So I thought we'd just jump to Bob and say, what are you excited about in terms of what the impact of AI can have, very specifically in the medical and healthcare field?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to do an awful lot of things in medicine and healthcare. Basically because you can hopefully get so much more information. If you just look at diseases now, like most of what we do, usually there's like a single test, like say, if you could go into the doctor and get your cholesterol tested, and that gives you an indication, say, for heart disease. It's not perfect, but it's an indicator. But let's say you'd want to take a disease like cancer. You could, which I think we don't really know how to do early diagnosis, but could you, for example, take blood samples, urine samples, and you can get something like a transcriptome, that's just as one of many things, or you could get a protein profile, in which case you'd have enormous amounts of information. You could sort of get what I'd call a fingerprint in a sense. And then you could actually try to use AI to, for example, analyze those fingerprints, decide what type of fingerprint gives somebody is at risk for cancer, what person is not. And then you could also do drug testing that way too. You could see, maybe you'll have a fingerprint, for example, that as you look at it, that shows you that drug's going to treat that cancer for that person. Similarly, I think there's a lot of other opportunities. I mean, we do a lot of chemistry in the lab, and one of the big challenges, say, in nanotechnology is we've developed nanoparticles that can deliver, I think, some of the drugs of the future, like messenger RNA and DNA, siRNA. And right now, there's ways to target them to certain places, like the liver, but very difficult to do it for other places. But what we've been able to do is literally design thousands and thousands of chemical structures. And we're talking to some of the people at MIT and the AI area about how you could find out which structures are going to tell you are going to be most effective. Let's say you do round one, you do thousands, and you see that some work pretty well at targeting certain types of cell types. That then hopefully will allow you to start predicting what ones to synthesize for round two and so forth. So I think there's just an enormous, and of course, the upshot of that is that you could someday have much, much better therapies for almost anything. So I think there's just enormous opportunities for the future.
Okay, I'm going to come back to healthcare in a minute. I'm going to skip all the way down to Professor Tang and then back to Jocelyn and back to Helen. Professor Tang, you both teach and start companies. Part of your education was here, but you are deeply steeped in the China market. If you were giving advice to the future entrepreneurs both in the US and China about how to create a winning company, what advantages would you tell them to draw upon here versus China?
Well, thank you. Well, since the tool I have in my hand is really like a hammer, so I approach everything as if it's a nail, right? So my advice to the company, if you start here, I think the first thing I want to advise is you start with a collaboration with SenseTime. That was not a joke. So it's really, just think about it. It's in the US, you almost have everything. You have the technology, the university, and the rule of law, and the venture capital, and all the big company who want to buy you when you grow. So it's really everything is set up. You have a pipeline, but at the same time, everybody here who start a company have the same access to that pipeline. So you are just one of everybody. So to have some distinct advantage, I think it makes sense to actually collaborate with a company in China, in Hong Kong, or anywhere in other part of the world, because China can offer something different. They have market, right? They have people who are willing to work 24 hours for much less salary. So anyway,
today.
Anyway, it's if you combine the advantage, then it puts you in a different position. So actually, I think for this topic, I have some comments. I think it should not be really China versus US. It really should be China and the US. We should really collaborate, work together. AI is really a perfect tool to break boundary between countries, between academic and industry, between different industry. So we should really take advantage of that. And also, every country should approach this in a different way. If we all approach this from the same way, like in China, it's probably the government play more roles to work with the company. In the US, it's more market driven. I think it's good. It's like in China, it's like you are raising a farmland, right? So you can have a higher production, but it's just corn. But in the US, it's like a rainforest. So everything can happen. So you have something very unique come out of it. Yeah. So they both have an advantage and a disadvantage. So the key is really to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, you invest in Silicon Valley.
I do.
And I mean, I'm sure more broadly than that, but when you think about what is coming out of there and how you coach your entrepreneurs to succeed, you know, how do you think about AI and succeeding as a business coming out of the Valley?
Well, at Zetta, we're defined by three things: that we're the first stage of institutional capital that goes into a company. So I'm working with very early companies. We're I would say, the invention capital, not the growth capital. We're defined by seeking companies that invest in AI, that are built around AI and around competitive advantages from data. Zetta stands for Zettabyte, which this crowd would know is 1 trillion gigabytes. And thirdly, we invest only in startups with B2B business models. So I am very focused on finding entrepreneurs who want to transform the world of business with AI. And I think it's no surprise that a technology that is novel, that is cutting edge, and that is potentially risky really got its start in consumer. My introduction to AI was working at Facebook, and my first big project there was adopting machine learning for the newsfeed's ranker. And it makes sense that the first places where AI could prove itself would be things like movie recommendations, or deciding whether to show you the cat photo or the baby photo. Decisions where if we got it right, everybody was better off, and if we got it wrong, well, at the time we didn't think that the order of your newsfeed had civilization-shaking consequences. Now that we move into business, we are trying to solve problems that are more mission critical, where companies are betting their bottom line on it. And initially, we've talked about this concept of the AI risk curve, which dictates that AI will be adopted not just as the technology is ready to solve the problem, but also as human beings and companies are ready to accept the consequences, the social and business consequences of using technology for this problem. So we think that it's natural then that in business, at first, companies were willing to adopt AI as an assistant to a human being, to make recommendations to help human beings, maybe to help sales reps, optimize how they were calling on leads. The next stage is to trust AI so much that it can automate fully a task end to end without human oversight. And that, I believe, is the era that we're in now. But what is coming, and what really has me excited, is a world in which we can start turning AI loose on problems that are too hard for human beings. Problems like human health, problems like the health of the planet. And I want to chime in and sort of echo something that Xiao said about collaboration, which is, I don't know if space race is the right analogy here. I don't want the US to have the best healthcare in the world. I want the whole world to have the best healthcare in the world. I want the whole world to have access to the best technology to solve our climate problems, because that's only a problem that can be solved globally. I want the whole world to have access to the best ways to design for smart cities. And I think reasonable people can disagree on whether the whole world ought to have, for example, the best military applications of AI. So there's places maybe where nation states need to guard or protect their secrets. But I would say that I am excited about startups that have a global aim and intend to have global impact.
Nice. Okay, so now you brought up the issue of potentially negative impacts of AI and robotics. I mean, I think there's a general feeling in the public that these things are scary. They're going to take our jobs. They're going to change the world in ways that are going to drive more inequality. So Helen, not to put you on the spot, but as the roboticist here, I thought this would be a fun one for you.
All the robots' fault.
Which is, if we're driving more and more inequality because of AI, because the assistant becomes the worker, the assistant becomes the worker, what should we do? Are we going to tax robots? Are we going to, how should we fix this? And what's the role of the entrepreneur in that?
We're talking about the negative, but let's just touch on the positive first. Having a little robot do your vacuuming actually saves you time so you can do other things, and people have plenty of other things to do. Having a cell phone in a third world country allows people to communicate or know market data. People would not give up these technological inventions, and as they get more, I think it's hard to predict exactly what the ramifications are. We're at pretty low unemployment right now in this country, at least, and I just see so many wonderful areas that are going to be pushed. I mean, electric cars are coming, huge industries are forming, automatic cars, drone delivery, roboticizing their house, making it care for you. There's so many areas that are really changing the infrastructure of everything, and those will provide, jobs for people. And then as a society, we can choose what else we want to do. Maybe there's more teachers, maybe there's more exploration of space. I think we have to make those positive decisions. The environment was mentioned. We have to make those decisions. I'm for the 4-day work week myself, not for people who work for me, but for everyone else. Because people couldn't have imagined earlier on that people would only, work 40 hours a week. It's like you work from sunup to sundown. You maybe have Sundays off, and you have to, go and socialize and go to church and stuff. But, I think we will morph as society, and then that's where policy and AI have to, and robotics have to get together, because I think we can do things that makes everybody's lives improve.
Anybody else want to?
Oh, and we shouldn't tax the robots.
Oh, don't tax the robots.
Taxing productivity is a really, really bad idea, because you have to have your company be more successful and create jobs. If you don't do that, someone else, potentially from China, is going to eat your lunch.
Jim, so, I do think these policy questions around privacy, and I'm going to ask all of you to weigh in on this one. These questions around convenience versus privacy are really tricky questions. And I think, if we go back to China versus US, we've made really different decisions about that. And partly because China can make decisions with a very centralized government, and the US will have a very hard time legislating almost anything, as we've seen over the last few years. And so my question for you is, how do you think about the evolution of that tricky problem?
In 2 minutes or less. I would just offer, there are certain areas where the privacy is so important that, again, I'm a very firm believer, if we just focus on healthcare and AI, I think we're 1 or 2 years into a 10-year wondrous journey on how AI, biology, computational science, many of the professors and postdocs and students represented in this room are going to create huge, beneficial, wondrous outcomes to improve cancer diagnosis, help doctors come to better decisions. The challenge is so often in the press or in discussions or in events in Cambridge or Palo Alto, it's an either or. Will AI replace the doctors? Absolutely not. The doctor's decision making, if it's computational pathology, rather than wait 10 days for slides to come back or breast cancer imaging, improving the efficiency and then improving the accuracy so doctors can do better work for patients. That is what the promise, if we take AI in healthcare, is so powerful. Now with that, we just have to be really stringent around privacy laws, security, and I think the US will continue to have an advantage relative to that, because for the breakthrough outcomes led by the women and men in this audience, you need the privacy, you need the security, but it is wondrous what I see at the great hospitals and universities working together across departments on interdisciplinary wondrous outcomes in cancer, cardiology, and other areas where AI serves as a foundation.
So, Bob, you are a professor at MIT, and you've trained so many future entrepreneurs and will continue to. When you think about, how you, and academia is open, academics collaborate worldwide. When you think about teaching this next generation both entrepreneurship and collaboration, how do you think that works with AI?
Well, I think, actually, I think you want to, we publish everything we do. We patent it too, but we publish everything we do. And I think that we want to get knowledge out to the world. And I think that, my experience in most areas of technology, or at least biotechnologies, that publications are good. you know, that getting it out is actually an additional validation. But I would say that I think actually both of what you each said, I think, are right. I think you want to do things that are good for the world. You know, I think that, and I think what you said about medicine is exactly, I mean, that's the kind of thing I was trying to get across when Katie asked me earlier. So I think that you want to do those things. You want to get technology out. You want to learn things, but you know what I see sometimes, and I think this is an important thing about entrepreneurism. You know, so many times that when you come up with an idea, let's say you came up with an idea in the AI area or some other area, you know, in my experience, a lot of times people are going to tell you it's a terrible idea. They won't give you any money. They won't let you know. And so I think the most important thing to me when I talk to people in the lab is, you know, we try to come up with ideas that we think will change the world. You should recognize that you're going to get a lot of criticism, and a lot of times people are going to tell you it won't work. You know, and I say, you know, keep trying, keep going after it, and so if you don't do it, you know, a lot of times nobody else will, and I think that's the opportunity for a great entrepreneur.
Awesome. Okay, so now we are going to go down the line, and we'll start at this end with Professor Tang. So AI is going to be applied, I believe, to almost every industry. When you think of the next big things coming, what is the most exciting space for you that AI will be applied to, besides SenseTime, besides your phone?
I think AI is pretty much going to be applied to anywhere you have data. And in this digital world, it's really hard to find somewhere that doesn't have data. So it's probably going to be everywhere.
At the same pace, or do you think something's going to lead?
It's certainly a different pace. Also, I think it's not really, you know, to find a new area to apply AI. We have so many areas. We just only touch the surface at this point. You may hear a lot about you know, medical applications, the autonomous driving, fintech, all these things. But if you go down to it, you know, it's really hard to find any company who has made a lot of money from those areas. Even for Google, they haven't started making money on that. Because it's really difficult, because you need to really work with the industry. And the industry is the people who have worked on it for 100 years. So they have a lot of domain knowledge. And people from AI, from computer science, they just know algorithm. So it's really the two sides need to work together to get things done. And just give you an example. We are working with a casino company. So I'm very confident, you know, we have these cameras and all these things. We said, you know, we can track all the people, you know, on the blacklist who come in to try to cheat on you and all those things. And they said, we don't care, because nobody can cheat on us. The house always win. You know, the movies, the Ocean 11, Ocean 12, those you know, not those just story. What we care is our own employee. We have 100,000 of employees. And when they are dealing the cars and everything, they can really, you know, cheat us. So those are our biggest loss. Now, how can you monitor those things? And so it's really, you don't know the need of the industry. So for autonomous driving, is also you need to work with a car company. They can teach you a lot. But this is really difficult. Yeah. It's kind of hard. So I think for the next step is not to have all these big stories of new breakthrough. It's just how we get down to the business to actually make money. If we cannot make money, we cannot survive. I think every technology will have its 15 minutes of fame, right? And for AI, we have to think about how to get through the 15 years of fame, and you know, to really get it working. And I really think MIT did the right thing. They said they want to start a college focusing on AI, but it turns out it's a college of computing. But in China, we have a lot of college. It's college on AI. I think someday AI, this bubble, you know, but it's really computing. It's the innovation, the technology that will survive.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Jocelyn, what are you excited about that's going to pop next?
I think we're so much in the early innings. I mean, I think we're in the command line days of the internet, you know, and someday, you know, 10, 20 years from now, people will look back and think how primitive we were. I think what I am most excited about is building the structures and systems that enable us to do this well and to do it across the board. I think the Schwarzman College of Computing is an excellent first start. You know, this idea of educating AI bilinguals. I'm excited about, and I think there's a huge role for academic institutions, for MIT, Tsinghua, Stanford, and other places like that, to step forward in terms of creating a code of ethics, a code of standards for the types of work that we're doing around data and data privacy. I think those will be fundamental building blocks, actually, to enable the kinds of innovation we want to see. And I look forward, frankly, to more MIT grads choosing, and more scientists, engineers, and mathematicians actually to go into policymaking and to go into politics, so that we can have policies and regulations that create structure for what we're doing, that are informed by people who deeply understand. And you know, I think those are all sort of necessary precursors to enable the world we all want to live in, and that we want our kids and grandkids to live in.
And I guess I would ask you, Bob, just slightly differently. When you look at where your students are applying AI, like, what do you think is going to pop next?
Well, I think it's what I mentioned, and I think Jim mentioned too. I think, you know, therapeutics and diagnostics, I think, are giant opportunities.
Jim? Anything besides healthcare that you...
There's a lot,
of
but
course.
So much of what we all need to do as investors is go very deep in certain areas. And I think the big challenge is the interdisciplinary nature of bringing chemists, biologists, computation, I could go on and on, together in small entrepreneurial teams that are functioning extraordinarily well, and having diversity of women, men, underrepresented minorities, all at the table as we're building these next generation companies. But my goodness, to be an entrepreneur or postdoc as part of an entrepreneurial venture with affiliations at MIT and elsewhere, what a phenomenal time, I believe, to be a technology investor as well as an entrepreneur.
And Helen, you get the last word here.
You already know how I'm going to answer.
Well, I wonder how you'll answer.
Combining the computation with the physical, things that think, or robots, because, you know...
like, maybe more specifically, though, what are you excited that you're seeing where robots will be applied?
I mean, even where they're at today with autonomous cars, unthinkable in the 90s. In fact, with iRobot, we chose not to do it. We said, oh, they'll never let us on the road. They'll never let us get insurance and stuff like that. Package delivery, logistics in general. The whole train is being automated, you know, with the robots doing warehousing and fulfillment, et cetera. There'll be trucks. And getting the robots into the physical world, getting that computation from just being on desktops and in the cloud to in the physical world, I find that the most exciting, because at the end of the day, they kind of come to life.
Yep, that's amazing. Well, I want to thank the entire panel for their comments today and for being here. Appreciate it.